So our story today is about somebody, this guy here, who stretched his faith. And it's from 1 Samuel 14. It's the story of Jonathan. And I'm not sure it's a story we often think about, but it's one of my favourite stories in the Bible. Now, Jonathan is the son of King Saul, and King Saul was the first king of Israel, and his kingship has already started to go a bit wrong. And so because of that, God, I think, is punishing the country, and often they are being oppressed by their enemies, the Philistines. They have confiscated all the weapons from the Israelites. No one in Israel has a weapon except Jonathan, his father Saul, and possibly his armor bearer. Now, even though Saul's faith has started to go away, Jonathan's hasn't. He's a man of courage, he's a man of nobility, he's a man of loyalty, and he's a man of great faith. And so he says to his armor bearer one day, he said, I've got an idea. Why don't we go across to the Philistine outpost, across the valley that we're in? We'll go down the cliff we're on, we'll go up the other side of the cliff to where there's a Philistine outpost, and there's going to be at least 20 guys there, and basically we'll pick a fight with them. And his idea is this: maybe the Lord will act on our behalf. That's his motivation. He thinks to himself, I want to see God work, and I want to be the one through whom he might do it. Now, if you're the armor bearer and you hear that plan, I wonder what you're thinking. I think I'd be saying, I think I've left something on the stove in the kitchen. He might be saying, is it possible that I could become someone else's armor bearer right now? But he doesn't. He says, yeah, that sounds great. Now, are they both crazy? No, they're not crazy, because they know what God can do. And so Jonathan leads across. And he says, before we do this, he says, let's put a plan in place. And so as they get across the pass, as they get across the valley, they look up, and there's the Philistine outpost. There's all these Philistines at the top. And he says to his armor bearer, it would be foolish just to go ahead and do this unless we know from God that he wants us to do it. And so he says, we'll throw out a sign. If the people there, will show ourselves to them. If they say, come on up, then that will be our sign. But if they say, stay there and we'll come down to you, he said, then we'll know that God isn't in it. As they come out and as they face these guys, the Philistines shout down and say, come on up to us. Now, it's one thing having all these great ideas, when I'm wondering how the armor bearer feels at this moment, because he says, oh, okay, we're really doing this, are we? We really are going to now climb up this cliff to where these guys are. Now, there's other aspects of this Bible story I haven't told you. The two cliffs, they're called Bozez and Seneh, and the names of those cliffs are Thorny and Slippery. And God is giving us those details in this story to make us know that this is not humanly possible. If you know anything about military tactics, and I don't really, but I do know you don't go up a cliff to your enemy when they're all watching you and they can be throwing boulders down at you like that. But they say, yeah, we're going to do this. And so they start to climb up. What's Jonathan's motivation? He says this to his armor bearer: nothing can hinder the Lord from saving, whether by many or by few. And so they start to climb. And as they start to get to the top, what do they find? They find the Philistines are getting very close. Again, if I was the armor bearer, I think I'd turn to Jonathan and say, what was the plan again? What? How are we going to do this? But Jonathan, he just goes up and he tackles them. He does what is humanly impossible to do. They get to the top. It doesn't seem like there's any chance at all this could work. But what happens is that they defeat all of the Philistines. In that first period of time, they defeat 20 of the Philistines. The rest of the Philistines start to panic. They start to kill each other. When Israel hears about it, the whole country comes out of the caves and the holes and behind the trees they're hiding in, and the country suddenly wells up in this great surge of faith. They believe God, and God gains the victory for them. All because one man didn't accept that this was a time of defeat. He still believed that God might achieve a victory even in the bleakest circumstances. You know, How did Jonathan do that? He wasn't crazy. He knew the stories from the Bible. He knew what Samson had done when he picked up the jawbone of a donkey and killed 1,000 people. He would have known the exploits of Gideon and all the judges. He would have known what God is capable of. And so he said, I want to be someone else through whom God can do these amazing things. And he did it. He brought his armor bearer in, who also could share in that wonderful moment. 3 chapters later, David goes out to fight Goliath. How is David able to do that? We always think it's because he knows that he's defeated the bear and the lion with the help of God. But I think he knew this story. I think he knew what Jonathan had done, and that surged his faith up so that he could say, I'm going to go and do this as well. You know, we live in a day and age where I think God is looking for people to stand up and do stuff. He's not asking us to do this, but he is asking us to share our faith. He's asking us to be a witness to those around us. And I think what he wants is people who want God to be spread around. He's looking for people who believe that God is capable of doing it. People who remember what God has done throughout the Bible and for the Christians throughout history. And if we were to do that, if we're willing to be the one through whom God might work, and if we say, Lord, use me, no matter how much our faith gets stretched, we will be amazed at what God could achieve.